No, my heart and my welcome to tonight's live stream. I am Monique Bradley, and it's a real honour to host these chats. This is the third in our series of live streams, talking about something that is very dear to most Kiwis' hearts, and that's the topic of conversation. It's Diabetes Action Month this month, and we are speaking with you live, opening up a conversation to chat about how diabetes impacts your life, the life of our family and friends, the life of the people in our community or the people that we love. And tonight we are focusing on a few different things. So we are focusing on community, we're focusing on our family, the support they provide on our journey. And also tonight we are diving a little more deeply into the world of living with type 1 diabetes, which I think is such an important topic to have. Now, if this is your first time joining us on one of these live chats, feel free to send in your comments, feel free to be part of the conversation. And for those of you who are new to the world of diabetes, tonight we are specifically talking more deeply into type 1. And for those of you who aren't familiar with type 1 diabetes, it is really important to note and to open up the conversation that type 1 is an autoimmune condition. It's often diagnosed in childhood, but can affect you at different stages of your life. It can be diagnosed at any age. And this type of diabetes, unlike type 2 or gestational diabetes, is not preventable. So it's not related to lifestyle choices and it has no cure. And we wanted to just share that with you up front, particularly for those of you who might be supporting somebody with type 1 diabetes and you want to learn a little bit more about the condition. It is in fact a lifelong, relentless condition. And for anyone sitting out there tonight with type 1, whether you've had that for a number of years or you're newly diagnosed, a lot of aroha from all of us to you. We see you, we hear you, we acknowledge you. This month is all about love, don't judge, and we're here for you to open up that conversation so that your voices are heard. Tonight, we are chatting with some really amazing and important guests. So here on the couch with me, kia ora to you, welcome. This is lovely Natalie Hanna, and Natalie is the Coordinator of Youth Services for Diabetes New Zealand for their Auckland branch. Thank you for your work. And thank you for being part of this conversation. It's an honour having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very happy to be involved.
And we're going to hear a little bit about your story with diabetes as well. I think it's an amazing angle that we'll be sharing with you tonight. And down in Christchurch, a big shout out to our buddies down there. Kia ora to you. We have got, you may recognise these two gorgeous people, familiar faces from Married at First Sight. And there on the left, Diabetes New Zealand Ambassador, Brett Renault, and a lovely wife, Angel. Thank you so much for joining us on the stream tonight. Kia ora to you. Now, we, again, want you to be part of the chat. We're live, you can send in your questions, you can be part of the conversation. Time permitting, I'll be taking your questions 3 times tonight, and I'll be sharing those with our guests to see how maybe they can share a little bit of their wisdom about this incredible topic so that we're all in this together. Now, the last few weeks we have been talking specifically about diabetes distress. Now, I think over the last few years people have really focused on the education side of diabetes, but diabetes distress is something that hasn't necessarily been spoken about openly. So it's really important that this year we are focusing on the emotional well-being as much as the physical well-being of those living with diabetes. And it can, of course, affect anybody at any age. So, you know, parents, carers, partners, they're really important in that diabetes journey. And that's what we're talking about this evening, is focusing on those of you who may be finding it a little bit challenging, or those superheroes out there who are managing their diabetes really well. And also all of the carers. This is for you tonight too. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to head straight down to Christchurch. Brett and Angel, I'm going to start with you guys there, and I've got a few questions just to find a little bit more about your story. So Brett, my understanding is you were diagnosed with type 1 at the age of 7. That's incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up with diabetes from such a young age?
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago now, so that was 1990, so I've had it for 30 years now. It was very different. To anyone out there who has diabetes now, you're living in a great time to have it. There's never a good time to have diabetes, but technology is just amazing now. And back in 1990, it was seen that we weren't basically allowed to eat anything with sugar in it. It was very different. And with science and research and with things like pumps and stuff, it's just become so much easier. And I definitely remember my first week in hospital back in 1990. And it was very overwhelming for my parents. Didn't know much about it. They were on holiday in Australia at the time. So that was very interesting. And they knew nothing about it and had to rush home. I was staying with my nana, and my nana spent the first few nights in hospital with me. And it's been forever changed my life, really. Yeah.
And that's actually one of the things I was going to ask you is how did that diagnosis at the time, how did that really affect not just you but your family as well? Obviously rushing back from holiday, but what changed at that time?
Yeah, well, I guess the massive thing I always think about is, and it's only probably later in life I've realised, is how it affected my brother and sister as well. Back then, obviously, I had to eat really healthy, and so we had no sugar. So, my brother and sister didn't really have an Easter and stuff because, couldn't have Easter eggs, and we drank things like Thrifty, which is some pretty average orange juice.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and they were just on that, not Raro, because that's just what it was. I was a diabetic, so I don't know, they ate really healthy because of me, but it was pretty overwhelming for the whole family. But yeah, we dealt with it and got through it together. And I went on some camps as a young fella with all the other diabetes and learnt to inject myself pretty quick. I think by the age of 8 or 9, I was giving myself needles, which is pretty cool at that age. Yeah.
That's incredible. And Angel, one of the things I really wanted to check in with you, here you guys are 3 years later, you're still married, you're happy as ever. What was it like? You marry a stranger and all of a sudden you meet this incredible man and you learn pretty quickly too, this is a man who's living with an autoimmune condition. What was that like for you in that experience?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it didn't actually really change that much about, how I felt about Brett or anything anything like that. It didn't really change much for me. It was just, I guess, learning about diabetes in general because I didn't know much about it. And I didn't really realize, day to day how much there is involved with it. So just even understanding, the highs and the lows and how Brett feels at certain times or what have you. There is a lot to learn. And to be honest, I still learn every day, especially as the technology develops.
Right.
But as far as as a human, you still love him all the same because it doesn't actually make a difference. It's just kind of like who he is.
I totally agree with you there. So from that, as you're learning to support him, particularly over the last 3 years, what are sort of the key things you've learnt to help him through those highs and lows?
So I think one of the key things is being patient, to be fair, and being honest, because Brett had never really shared this with anyone else, on this kind of level. Well, your parents is much different to, your wife or your partner. So it was just being really patient. And I guess we really talked about cues and how we would, tackle the highs and lows. And if I'm no, you need to stop eating now. And he's like, no, stop. So, it's just understanding how to work through those things together because often when they're feeling that high or they're feeling that low, it's actually sometimes it can be hard to rationalize with them. But from where we were to where we are now, we're just it's just been so amazing. And it's been really cool because I'm here to help Brett to almost be make sure you go to your appointments and all that kind of stuff and have them be accountable, but also don't nag. It's a really fun line. If you talk to your partner about managing that, you can actually find a way that you probably balance it better than you ever have.
That's brilliant. That's incredible feedback. Thank you so much for that. Now, one of the things, just before we jump into the studio, one of the things that I wanted to very briefly touch on is the fact that recently a survey was done for Diabetes New Zealand around emotional well-being, and it showed that in that survey that 81% of people with diabetes had been experiencing what they call diabetes distress. And I just wanted to check in with you, Brett. Is that something that's affected you? Have you experienced diabetes distress?
Yeah, 100%. I think when I was going through my teenage years and just diabetes in general, you're quite often just thinking about your HbA1c, and you're thinking about, all the sort of the hard facts, but you kind of sometimes need to take a step back and think about, obviously, your mental health about it as well. And I think that's what's great. Mental health in general is becoming a lot more prevalent in just general society, and diabetes week like this month's been great, and need to talk about it more and more. It took me a while through the C8 Canterbury District Health Board, but I actually saw a psychologist about my diabetes, and Angel come with me to that. And it was so helpful, because it was just seeing diabetes from another point of view, from someone else's point of view, and that with my diabetes, like I was trying a lot of things, but they weren't really working, and it was just good to get a different perspective on that.
Wow.
And the psychologist was very good at explaining diabetes to Angel as well. And I think one thing that I've found it hard is, you have diabetes and you're working on it all the time, and sometimes it's not your favourite subject to talk about. You come home for a hard day and you don't really feel like talking about diabetes. Well, if you go to your appointments in the diabetes centres around New Zealand with your partner, they can be almost better at explaining it than me sometimes.
Wow. That's really important nuggets of wisdom right there. So for anybody watching as well, please take some of that on board and share that with family and friends. I totally agree. I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Brett and Angel. We'll be coming back to you guys very shortly. All right, here in the studio, Natalie. Natalie, it's great to have you here. You are the Youth Services Coordinator for the Auckland branch of Diabetes New Zealand. But before we jump into the questions tonight, I want to know from your experience, first of all, what's your connection with diabetes? What's your personal story?
Yeah, so as well as working for Diabetes New Zealand Auckland branch, I also have a 15-year-old daughter, Amy, who has type 1 diabetes. So I have both a professional and a personal connection as well.
Wow.
So Amy was diagnosed 4 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. So still relatively a new case. What was that like at that time when she was diagnosed? What was that like for you as a parent and for the family?
So it was just incredibly unexpected, not something that we had ever thought would affect us. I've actually got a medical background, so I trained as a pharmacist, and my husband's a doctor, and I actually remember learning about type 1 diabetes during my training, and learning the age that it is most commonly diagnosed, and thinking to myself, right, well, that's not me. I'm past that age, so that's not going to affect me. And I didn't have kids at that stage, and I never thought that one of my kids might be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So,
wow,
yeah.
Incredible story, dear to your heart, and you're able to do something incredible for the community. So, this month is talking about the emotional impact of diabetes. So we've spoken with a lot of adults, obviously, over the last couple of weeks, but what about for a teenager? What have you seen with the emotional, you've got hormonal challenges, you've got life, you've got, peer pressure, you've got schooling going on. What's the emotional impact with that diabetes added on top?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's that one extra stress that's added in, that kids with diabetes, they have that one extra thing that they need to do. And often kids with diabetes, they might be the only one at their preschool, the only one at their school, maybe the only one in their family who has type 1 diabetes. So it's they feel quite alone and isolated. And I think being able to meet others who are also going through the same sorts of things is really, really helpful. I think kids with diabetes, they lose some of their independence because it's a medical condition that's a chronic condition and needs continuous care. So they tend to lose some of those freedoms. So for preschoolers, things like play dates can be challenging.
Yeah.
For school kids, things like school camps or sleepovers or school trips, often a parent will be asked to come along to manage their diabetes.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know with what you do, and I've actually got this later on in my schedule, but I thought it's really important to highlight now, kids that are going through the work that you do, being able to go to camps and being able to go to these events. What is we're talking about the stress of the emotional impact of living living with diabetes. So when they get to participate with other kids who have diabetes, they all speak the same language. In fact, they don't even have to say anything because they get where each other is at.
Yeah, totally.
What is it like for the well-being of those children who can participate in those sorts of events?
We often hear that it's a really important thing for them. It changes the way often that they think about their diabetes. So it helps them to know that they aren't alone, that there are other people going through the same sorts of things. So it helps to normalise it a little bit. And it also helps them to see how other people might manage their diabetes. So it helps them to see different ways that people have of maybe checking their blood sugars, so different technology that might be out there. And a lot of kids will do some of their firsts at camp. So my daughter gave her own first injection at a diabetes camp.
Wow.
And pretty much most camps we have at least one. At our last camp, I think we had 5 kids who gave their own first injections.
And of course, that's going to affect their confidence and everything when they know that they're the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and it gives them more independence, because if they can do their own injections, then they can be further away from a parent or a caregiver and do that themselves. They could do that themselves at school.
Wow.
And also it gives them a more of a sense of control. So that's a really hard thing about diabetes, is so much of it is out of your control. And you feel that you're being taken on this ride, and to be able to give them back some sense of control is really helpful.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Now, by the way, if you have just joined us in the chat tonight, welcome, kia ora to you. We do have to share with you a screen which just shares a little bit of a disclaimer in the fact that none of these chats are designed to diagnose you at all. I think that disclaimer will come up very shortly. These chats are really just to open up the platform to help you if you are living with diabetes, or if you're a supporter or carer for someone with diabetes, to open up that platform for conversation. And there are many different opinions that are being expressed at the moment and through these chats, and it's really important that if you do need help or support, please ask a professional, reach out to Diabetes New Zealand. They are here to help you. They're here to fight for you when it comes to technology. They're here to support you and do their very best to represent you in the best way possible. And that's what these chats are about tonight. Right, I'm going to head straight to the Facebook feed and let's have a quick look. This is great stuff. Lots of brilliant questions. People are asking a little bit about technology. So great question here. This is Lee, who's just said, I have a type 1 5-year-old and she is on the Insulin pump, and our biggest struggle is working out the carbs for certain foods like pasta. Any tips? So I'm going to jump onto you. Like, there's people who are saying there's all sorts of apps you can try. Being a mum, first-hand experience, what works for you?
So we definitely have a set of electronic scales. So and you're taught how to carb count. So we work out the number of carbs in the food. So pasta is one that's often quite high carbs. Mm-hmm. And I think often what people find is that the carbs tend to be absorbed over quite a long period of time. So insulin pumps are amazing because you can set the pump to deliver an amount of insulin right away, and then you can set it to give a second amount over an extended period of time. Oh, wow. So, but of course, each person is different, and each meal can be quite different with their fat, carbohydrate, and protein content. So there is definitely a bit of trial and error, and working out what works particularly for you. But insulin pumps are amazing with that ability to change things up. Yeah.
Now, speaking of that sort of technology, I think we should jump across to Brett as well, because we were talking about this sort of wearable tech before. Brett, if we can just pop back to you, and I just want to, if you're okay to share, I want to talk about the technology that you are currently wearing and how you would manage your diabetes.
Yeah, well, I've got the same pump as your 5-year-old out there.
Awesome.
Got that one right there. And then I've got the G6 Dexcom on my arm as well. So these two talk to each other. And it's been life-changing, really. I've only had these probably 3 or 4 months now. And it's just been absolutely fantastic. And I'd like to say to you, with the 5-year-old, you're doing a good job and it will get easier. I've had it for 30 years. I can just make it on my head. But it does get easier.
And that's good to know. That's really good to know. I have a question for you, Brett, on that. So obviously being able to carb count and things like that is really handy. What happens when, for people who are new to this world, what happens when you go to a restaurant?
Yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. There are apps, of course. What's great about the pump, like you said, you can do those different boluses and things like that. But yeah, technology is your friend these days. With the one on my arm here, my CGM, I can grab out my phone and it will tell me how it's tracking as well.
Wow.
So after you've eaten, you can have a look. It will tell you how fast it's going up and all those sort of things. So, yeah, if you can, definitely use technology to help you. I guess it's just trial and error, like mentioned before, and it does get easier for sure.
That's such great information. Thank you so much for that, Brett.
Can I leap back in?
Oh, right. Yes, of course you can.
I actually wanted to say, Brett, seeing your technology there and knowing that you're on the Basal IQ, which is, like you were saying, where the Dexcom G6 links up to the Tandem T-Slim pump, and it can talk to help stop you having a low blood sugar. The next step is that closed loop, so that full loop. Also called it's an automated insulin delivery system, and that will actually help in systems in situations like this pasta meal, because what will happen is if your blood sugar is continuing to rise and you haven't given quite enough insulin, the system will automatically give you a bit more insulin, and it will help to bring your blood sugar back into range.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that is that's not far away. So.
We like to hear that.
The Tandem T-Slim and the Dexcom G6, hopefully next year we'll have an upgrade to the pump software, and Control IQ will do that full closed loop.
That's just brilliant. Good news, Brett?
Yeah, it's great. It's good stuff.
Okay, I'm going to take one more. I want to take one more question here. Oh, there's so many good questions. Lots of people are saying that there's really good apps to use. And other people, it's great to see you all giving each other advice, saying, just talk to a dietitian or get in touch with Diabetes New Zealand. This is great. Love it. A few people saying that their children do feel alone. So let's talk very quickly about, because youth services is your area. So how do we support if your child is the only one in their group, in their social circle, who may be struggling or finding it challenging living with diabetes? How can we emotionally support those children?
So I think a big thing for them is giving them a peer group. So giving them others that, like you say, just get it and understand it. So coming along to events and meeting others who are going through the same thing is a really big thing and is really helpful. There's a couple of other things that, so Diabetes New Zealand has lots of events that are happening. So look for local events in your area. We just had a lovely event at Auckland Zoo. So that was
wonderful.
That was fantastic. I think the other thing that we could maybe talk about is Jerry the bear.
I've been looking at him. It's super cute.
Yeah, so Jerry is available through Diabetes New Zealand, and he's for all kids aged 4 to 10 years. And Jerry comes with an app, and basically the kids look after Jerry, and they can do finger pricks on Jerry, and they can give him injections or change his pump sites, and the app talks them through all of that.
That's brilliant. So that gives them confidence. And one of the things that I'm hearing from our chats is normalising this for kids. And removing stigma. And stigma is one of the things that was highlighted as well, or discrimination in the emotional wellbeing survey. And we're going to have a quick chat about that later on in the chat. But yeah, I think making this normal, what a wonderful educational tool. It connects to an app, so it gives children the confidence to be able to look after themselves and the independence and autonomy through that fun education. Would that be fair?
Definitely.
So Jerry gets to go on play dates.
Yeah.
And have fun as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. I can imagine Jerry is extremely well loved by children all over New Zealand. Now, by the way, if you do have a child who is newly diagnosed, if your child is between 4 and 10 years of age, you can get in touch with Diabetes New Zealand, and Jerry could be living in your home as well. So do make sure you reach out. Now, speaking of which, if you do need any help at any time, you've seen the information at the top of the screen, but here's a bit more information for you. If you have been struggling with diabetes distress, and really this is the first time we're having these big conversations this month, there is support for you out there. You can give them a call or you can text 1737 and somebody is there to talk to you any time of day or night. There is always help available for you. You can also head to the Diabetes New Zealand website, so that's diabetes.org.nz. There's a whole load of information, including resources for teens and tweens who may be diagnosed, about how to navigate through different stages of their lives and the pressures or the challenges they might be facing living with type 1. So we're going to jump into another quick question, and it was that topic of being challenged with discrimination, because this is something that really came up in that survey. And Brett, I wanted to ask you a quick question around this. People who have been struggling or finding it challenging or have suffered discrimination because of their type 1 or type 2 diagnosis. Let's open up that conversation. What advice would you give specifically young people, because this is your story too? What would you give any young people who might be watching or their family? What sort of advice or support would you recommend for those living with particularly with the emotional effects from the stigma, from the discrimination associated with the diagnosis?
Great question. I guess I was very lucky. I got involved with Diabetes Youth Christchurch from a very young age, and the camps were just great because we had diabetic role models come speak to us. I remember going up to Mount Hutt, and one of the ski patrollers up there had diabetes, and he spoke to us. And just seeing people with it that are living a life as a ski patroller, how good's that? Those sort of things really helped me personally. But yeah, and then obviously there's some really good groups on social media that can help you out as well. But yeah, just be aware that, I travelled the world. I went snowboarding for 7 years. I even went on a reality TV show. You can do absolutely anything you want. You can do anything you want. But it is a challenge. You've got to keep on top of it. It never gives you a day off. But just, stay strong, kia kaha. Talk with as many people as you can, or find someone that you can talk to about it, and just stay positive. And there's definitely help out there for everyone if you need it. And I guess I was pretty fortunate. I think a very good thing I did was play a lot of sport, team sports and things like that. I think that was very helpful for me in keeping active. Doing those camps, I just loved them. They were great.
So you'd encourage every child, if they have a connection to their local youth support group in their area, they need to get involved. They need to do everything they can. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Can I have a special shout out to the Diabetes Taranaki team? I go up there every year, me and Angel, and as a youth team, we do a relay around Mount Taranaki. It's absolutely fantastic. So shout out to all those guys. And that we get together with them. And everyone does a leg. It's a 24-hour race, and that's just one little part of New Zealand that's doing that. And I know Christchurch do a great job, and I'm sure Auckland does a great job. Everyone will be doing a good job, and get involved. Just sing out if you, especially those sort of things. I think are just perfect, and it gives the parents some time off as well, which I think is really, really important as well, and even the brothers and sisters and people like that. And it's just a good all-round experience, I feel.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody you've mentioned, and in fact, all of the groups across New Zealand will be grateful for your shout out, Brett. Thank you so much. Brilliant. And also, I just wanted to jump back to you actually very quickly, Angel, as well. You're part of that journey now too. You're meeting everybody firsthand. Are you seeing that same sort of support that you give your husband? Are you seeing that from everyone, or does everybody need to step up and do a little bit more, to share a little bit of heart, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of love, to do more and be more for those living with type 1 or type 2?
Honestly, like everyone I've met, and I have met so many people from being part of the diabetes community, and they are honestly all so amazing and incredible to each other, and you definitely are not alone. Like, I just can't believe, like, even when we were up in Taranaki that time, there was a woman who couldn't get her pump on right, and so Brett and the guy we were staying with drove around to his house to help her get the pump on their boy.
Wow.
You know, like there's just so much support out there. It is, from what I've seen, and it is actually amazing. It's actually a super cool community, as unfortunate as it feels sometimes. You know, at the end of the day, it's pretty darn cool.
Wow, that's just incredible. I had no idea.
I think that's so true. It's not a community that you ever want to welcome anyone into, that you never want anyone to have to be a part of, but it is just an incredible, close-knit, tight community, and we all go out of our way to help each other out. So, you know, anyone who's needing anything, someone will put up a hand and help them out.
That's so incredible to hear. Thank you so much for that, Angel. Utterly brilliant and really, really positive to hear as well. Thank you. I know that there's been a lot of questions coming through, particularly because we are focusing on children this evening and how they're dealing with living with diabetes as well. And I know, as mentioned, there's a lot of resources on the Diabetes New Zealand website around how teens and tweens, kids of all ages really, can navigate their way through living with diabetes. I think it's so important. Head to that website, or if you know somebody who is newly diagnosed or needs information, please share that. If you've got friends, family in the community, share the information. Let's all spread a little bit of love around the country. And I noticed that there was a question here from Shona, who said one of the biggest challenges, or the worst part for our girl, was the birthday party invitations disappeared when people discovered that she had type 1, and she found it quite devastating. And I think a lot of parents perhaps aren't sure how to cater or look after somebody who has type 1, and they're suddenly put in that position of caring. So, you know, from that perspective, what can be done to help educate more people about, you know, we want every child to live their happiest and fullest life, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think education is key, and diabetes is one that people often have misconceptions about, or they don't know a lot about. And just every single one of us, the more that we can be brave and talk about it, helps each little bit. But the hard thing is that, of course, within the community of people with type 1 diabetes, people are different. So we're all different. We all manage slightly differently. So kids with type 1 diabetes can eat just the same as anybody else. And so hopefully that would normally mean a healthy diet.
And I think that's really important for people to understand, is that, I mean, and Brett was saying this earlier, you know, things were different when he was a kid as opposed to now.
Yeah, we have so much more technology that we can give insulin to cover carbs when they go to a birthday party, and often they're racing around anyway, so they're burning off quite a bit.
So true.
But having said that, some other people might choose to eat low carb, so that might be a choice that their family makes, so that might be different. So I think, if you're, you know, hosting a birthday party, invite the kid along. Honestly, they just want to come along and have fun.
That's true. And a lot of kids go to parties.
We'll make it work.
That's true. And a lot of kids go to parties and they're too busy having fun to eat, let's be honest. So it's more important that they go and they get that social experience, which is so important for kids' development. So thank you, Shona, for sharing that. I think it's a really important conversation to have. And I'll just check one more comment. Lee, we love the pump and using the extended bolus with the higher carb foods. Hope I said that right. We have the Libra as well. She's about to start school. Thanks for that, Brett and ladies. Awesome. I'm glad this is resonating with you. Now, very quickly, you did mention to me earlier about some upgrades to technology and your daughter, and I do want to just highlight what's happening because I think this is incredible for those of you with type 1. Do you want to just share a little bit about what's happening right now?
You know, as we were saying, Brett's using this technology at the moment with, he's got a glucose sensor, and that sends readings automatically every 5 minutes either to an insulin pump or to a phone, and that can be integrated in with the pump so that it can help to stop blood sugars from going low. And we're incredibly lucky. Amy is actually on a clinical trial at the moment, so she is on the CREATE clinical trial, which is being run by the University of Otago. with funding from the Health Research Council.
Wow.
So got to give them a plug because it has been absolutely life-changing. So Amy is using the Dexcom G6, and then she is using a new pump called the Dana I, and that was actually developed by a New Zealander with type 1 himself.
Wow.
And it's designed to loop, which is what we call when basically the glucose monitor talks to the pump and it reacts depending on what your blood sugar is. So if she's going a bit high, it'll automatically give her a bit more insulin. If she's going a bit low, it'll stop delivering insulin until her blood sugar comes back up again. So just
incredible,
absolutely amazing. And through the night, rather than having to wake and get up and treat a low or treat a high, the pump is the system is doing all stable. Of that. Yeah,
that's utterly brilliant, and that of course positively impacts your health, not just from the blood sugar monitoring or blood glucose monitoring, but also the quality of your sleep, your everything, your sleep.
The less decision making that you need to do, that's right. But I do have to say that at the moment in New Zealand, pumps are funded if you meet the pharmac criteria, but none of the glucose monitors are funded at the moment. So it's becoming more and more important that we actually do find funding for those devices as they move from just being reading your glucose to actually being this entire automated system.
I think it's brilliant. And that's one of the things I do want to give a shout out to Diabetes New Zealand for. They are working so hard at an advocacy level for all of you struggling or finding it challenging living with type 1 diabetes. They're doing their very best to talk to the government to see if they can get more funding to help you all. And that's part of the importance of these conversations as well. Almost there. Oh, Shona Todd's just saying that her daughter loves Jerry the bear. So many of you are saying how important that the camps are that you've been on. It's wonderful to see so many positive comments in here. Please keep them coming. And if we don't manage to touch on your comments tonight, remember that there are people from Diabetes New Zealand who are happy to chat with you online as well. A couple of final questions that I do need to ask very quickly, because of course this month is Diabetes Action Month, and the key theme is love, don't judge. We're not just I don't think we're a country of 5 million or a team of 5 million, we're a whānau of 5 million, because really every person I know either has a family member or a friend who either has type 1, type 2 or has been affected by gestational diabetes. So we're all really in this together. So what I really wanted to open up is that conversation very quickly about the fact that distress is real. There's the overwhelm which goes with making all the decisions, which is what you've highlighted as well. So for anybody right now who may be struggling with that distress or overwhelm, it's just you can't be bothered to maintain your wellness. If you are in that state, Brett, I want to jump down to Christchurch with you. What sort of advice would you share for somebody who might be struggling at the moment with that overwhelm?
You're not in it alone. Diabetes is really tough. When you're high, you obviously feel very thirsty and things like that. And then obviously if you're low, you could be going to bed worried about not waking up low, so that you don't sleep. And then if you got, it's just this continuous cycle. So it's very, very important. I feel like the first thing you really need to do is get on top of your blood sugars, and that can be like the hardest thing to do when you're feeling a bit down. But it's just the number one most important thing. Me personally, I feel like when my blood sugars are better, I mentally feel better, and I think there's some science behind that as well. And so it's just so key. I use exercise a lot. I feel my diabetes, and I need a lot less insulin as well when I'm exercising, and I feel like my levels are good there as well. So and it's just a very good thing for your mental health in general is to do exercise, clears the mind a bit. So do some exercise, keep on top of those levels. It's not easy. It's always tough, but just keep on top of it. Stay positive. Know that everyone around has got diabetes and we're all working hard together, and we all have good and bad days, but just keep your chin up and do it for me if you have to. Give me a call if you have to. Love doesn't judge. Aroha, let's all do it together and stay positive.
Oh, I just think that's brilliant. And Angel, I just wanted to ask you too, as a supporter, of somebody with type 1, for those other supporters in the community or in families, what advice would you give them, either for caring with somebody, for somebody with type 1, and for caring for themselves as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely make sure you really talk, just communicate to your partner about how much they want your involvement in it too, and make sure you know that they're always there for you. Tell them, encourage them to go along to the hospital checks and all sorts of stuff. And I think reach out to your friends or other people in the diabetes community that don't necessarily have diabetes themselves or are a carer as well. But I think just communicating to your partner is really key about the solutions you might have. Almost like get permission, I think, to say, do you want me to remind you to pump, and stuff like that. And then that way they give you permission to help you out. But yeah, you definitely aren't alone. To every person that Brett knows, there's so many people around him that don't have type 1, and I know at the drop of a hat they'll be here in a second. So
wow,
yeah, it's it's huger than you think. You just gotta all stick in it together.
I'm with you. I totally agree. Thank you both for that. And finally, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Natalie, is for people who are now parents who have children who are newly diagnosed, what's the most important information you'd want them to know right now?
I think actually it's really, really helpful, really inspiring when they can see our youth leaders, so our volunteers who come along to events, or when they meet adults who have type 1 diabetes, because as a parent you just want to do the best for your kid, and so it consumes you initially, just making sure that you do everything right so that you can set your kid up to have the best possible outcomes that they can have. And I think when you meet these young adults or older adults with type 1 diabetes, you can really see that it hasn't stopped them, it hasn't held them back at all, and they've got on and they've been successful and they've done everything that they've wanted to do with their lives. And as a parent, type 1, especially when you're initially diagnosed, is all consuming. But for them, it's a small part of who they are.
Wow.
So it's something that yes, you have to think about it and you have to pay attention to it, but it doesn't define them, and it's not who they are.
I love that. It's so rich. It's so important. Everything I've heard tonight, I think, is utterly brilliant. So first of all, I just want to say, Brett and Angel down in Christchurch, thank you so much for your wisdom. I have learnt so much myself this evening. So thank you to you, kia ora to you both, for being part of the chat and for doing all the great work that you're doing. We love you guys. You're brilliant. And also here in the studio, Natalie, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do with the youth. I think it's brilliant. And thank you for being part of this journey and for sharing your daughter's journey as well. There's a lot of hope there with that clinical trial happening. And again, Diabetes New Zealand is doing everything they can to help you guys live your best life in the best way possible. So finally, a couple of things before we head away. I want to thank all of you watching. Thank you for being part of the chat. There are so many questions. I wish we had more time for that, but we want you to be part of that conversation. Again, we've got one more live stream coming up next week, so join us for that. We've got a panel discussion happening, and it's all going to be about your questions, so be part of that. And I also want to do a massive shout out to the amazing people at Mr. Vintage. These t-shirts are amazing. This merchandise are amazing. You can get yours on the diabetes website, Diabetes New Zealand website, diabetes.org.nz, all created by Mr. Vintage to do their part to give back to the diabetes community. All the money raised helps go towards things like advocacy and getting the Diabetes New Zealand team to fight on your behalf to help make that technology possible to help you live your best life. So share the links with your friends and family and get them doing their bit and to wear their heart on their sleeve. I think that's so important, particularly not just with this month, but for all eternity, I've decided. I've made that decision. And also too, for those of you with children between 4 and 10 years of age, remember to reach out to Diabetes New Zealand and grab Jerry the bear, super cute, to help make your child's journey a little bit more bearable. Oh, that's a bad joke. I'm so sorry, but you know what I mean. It's all about sharing love And the education is so important, so make sure you reach out. Right, time for us to head away again. Thanks for being part of the chat. We love you guys and we love you being part of these shows. And if you do have any questions at all, please reach out. There's always somebody at the end of that text message or the call 1737 who's happy to talk. And if you have any questions at all, remember to head to the Diabetes New Zealand website, diabetes.org.nz. On the website, there's loads of information for you about type 1, type 2 and gestational diabetes, all on there. And there is a whole section dedicated towards children as well. So if you need resources, head there to find out more. My name's Monique Bradley. It's been an honour to host these chats with you. Again, Brett and Angel, thank you so much. Natalie, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for being part of this. Time to head away. Ka kite anō e no hora. We'll see you guys next week.